She is 102 years old. She has buried her husband. She has buried her best friend. She has buried 2 of her children. She has survived the Great Depression, World War II, 3 cancers, and 4 presidents she called complete idiots. And when a young woman sat down next to her on a park bench and said, "I think I married the wrong person," this 102-year-old woman did not hug her. She did not say, "Oh, sweetheart, you'll be okay." She laughed. Not a soft, gentle, grandmotherly laugh, a real laugh, the kind that shakes your whole body. And then she said 7 words that changed that young woman's entire life. "We all married the wrong person, honey." And then she kept talking. Eleanor Mae Brooks was 22 years old when she first saw Robert. He was standing outside a factory in Cincinnati, Ohio. He had grease on his hands and a smile that she later described as absolutely ridiculous, too wide, too confident, like he already knew you were going to like him. She did not want to like him. She liked him immediately. They married in June of 1942. The war was happening. Everything was uncertain. But Robert had a job, a plan, and a laugh that made her feel safe even when nothing else did. Her mother cried happy tears at the wedding. Her friends said she was lucky. Eleanor, in her white dress, standing at the altar, thought, "Yes, this is the one. This is the person I was meant to find." She was absolutely certain, and she was absolutely wrong. By the time Eleanor was 27, she had a daughter named Patricia, a house that needed repairs they couldn't afford, and a growing, quiet, terrifying feeling she couldn't explain to anyone. "I don't know if I chose right." She didn't say it out loud at first. It felt like a shameful thing to think. But the feeling was there every morning, sitting across the breakfast table from Robert. Watching him leave dishes in the sink, watching him go quiet when she wanted to talk, watching him spend money in ways that made her chest tight with worry. They fought about small things. They fought about big things. They fought about his mother. They fought about money. They fought about how to raise their daughter. Eleanor slept on the couch for the first time at age 27. She stared at the ceiling and thought, "Is this it? Is this what I chose?" Her neighbor Margaret had been married for 30 years. One Tuesday morning, Eleanor sat down at Margaret's kitchen table and finally said it out loud. "I don't think Robert and I are right for each other." She waited for sympathy. She waited for Margaret to reach across the table and say something soft and kind. Instead, Margaret laughed, a full laugh, like Eleanor had said something both ridiculous and deeply true. And then Margaret said, "Honey, we all married the wrong person. Every single one of us. The trick is deciding to make them the right person anyway." Eleanor stared at her. She did not understand what that meant. Not that morning, not even that year, but she never forgot it. And 75 years later, sitting on that park bench, Eleanor said it was the most important sentence. "Margaret saved my marriage that morning. She didn't save it by giving me hope. She saved it by giving me truth." Here is what Eleanor understands now. The person you marry is not the person you stay married to. They cannot be. Because people change. You change. Life changes both of you. The Robert she married at 24 was ambitious, energetic, impatient. He had big plans and stayed up until midnight talking about the future. The Robert at 35 was exhausted. He had been passed over for a promotion. He came home quieter. He was distant in ways that scared her. The Robert at 50 was tired in a bone-deep way. Worried about money, worried about their daughter, not the man she had stood beside at that altar. The Robert at 65 had softened. Something in him had let go. He started holding her hand at movies. He started leaving little notes on the kitchen counter. He laughed more, mostly at himself. The Robert at 85 needed her to cut his food and remind him to take his pills. Which Robert did she marry? All of them. None of them. And she changed too. Shy at 24, fiercely opinionated at 40, depressed at 52 when her mother died. confident at 60 in ways she had never imagined, terrified at 73 when the first cancer came, patient at 80 in ways she had never managed before. If the Robert she married at 24 had met the her at 52, he might not have recognized her. They might not have liked each other. But they didn't get that choice. They grew together, even when they grew in different directions, especially then. Marriage is not about finding someone who completes you. Eleanor leans forward when she says this. That is a story. A nice story, but it is a story. And that story ruins more marriages than it saves. Nobody can complete you. If you walk into a marriage feeling incomplete, you will feel incomplete inside the marriage too. That is not his fault. That is not her fault. That is a problem only you can solve. What marriage is, Eleanor says, is simpler and harder than any romantic story. It is finding someone you are willing to keep choosing, even when they are not easy to choose. There were years I didn't like Robert very much. She says this plainly. I am 102 years old and I have nothing left to hide. There were months where I counted down the days until his fishing trips just so I could have the house to myself. There were arguments where I slept on the couch and genuinely tried to imagine what my life would look like alone. But I never stopped choosing him, not because I am a saint, not because it was easy, but because I made a decision. Like a business decision, like you decide to keep a house. I decided our marriage was worth more than my temporary unhappiness. Something shifts in a long marriage that you cannot manufacture and you cannot rush. You begin to understand why. His quietness. For years, she thought it meant he didn't care. She thought when she wanted to talk and he went silent, he was shutting her out. She fought him about it for years. And then one day, 2 decades in, she asked him quietly at the kitchen table, "Why do you go quiet when I need to talk?" He looked at her like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because I'm thinking," he said. "I'm trying to figure out what the right thing to say is. I don't want to say the wrong thing." She stared at him. He wasn't ignoring her. He was trying. 20 years of fighting about something that wasn't what she thought it was. The money. He spent money in ways that made her anxious. She thought he was careless. They fought about it constantly. And then one evening he told her about growing up, about the winter when there was no food in the house, about wearing shoes with holes to school and pretending he didn't notice the other kids noticing. He wasn't being careless. He was trying to prove to himself, and to her, and to their daughter, that he had made it, that they were safe. Every time he spent money, it was him saying, "Look, we have enough. We are okay." She stopped fighting him about money after that, and he became more careful after that, because she wasn't attacking him anymore. She was understanding him. Marriage is not 50-50. Anyone who tells you that is telling you a fairy tale. Some years it is 80-20. Some years it is 90-10. After Eleanor's surgery, Robert did everything. Cooking, cleaning, helping her to the bathroom, sitting with her through long afternoons when she felt too tired. When Robert lost his job at 54, something went dark in him. He sat in his chair by the window, and she could see the shame. Eleanor held them together. When his brother died and Robert could not get out of bed for 2 weeks, she brought food and sat with him and let him grieve. You don't keep score. The moment you start keeping score, I did this, you didn't do that, it's not fair. The moment you start keeping score, you have already lost. Life is not fair. Marriage is not a transaction. It is a partnership. And in any real partnership, sometimes one person carries more. That is not failure. That is how it works. I look at young couples now, and they expect so much. She is not judging them. Her voice is not unkind, but it is honest. They expect their partner to be everything. Robert was not Eleanor's best friend. Her best friend was a woman named Linda, who she met at 30 and kept for 40 years until Linda died of a stroke. Robert was not her intellectual match. She read books he would never touch. He could fix any engine on Earth in under 3 minutes. They didn't want the same things. But he was her partner. He was the person she called when something good happened and the person she reached for when something bad happened. He was the person she came home to. He's been gone 8 years. Robert, he died at 94, on a Tuesday, in his chair by the window. He looked comfortable. I like to think he was comfortable. I miss him every single day. Not because he was perfect. Not because we were soulmates in the way the movies talk about. I miss him because he was mine. And I was his. We built something together. It took 64 years to build. A life, a family, a language between just the two of us. You only get it by staying. Did I marry the right person? She almost smiles. I don't think that's the right question. I married a person. And then we both decided, over and over again, to make it right. If you are in a marriage right now and you are wondering if you made a mistake, here is what I want you to know. You probably did. We all did. Marriage is a mistake you make on purpose. And then you work, really work. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, but every single day. You work to make it the best mistake of your life. The question is, am I willing to keep choosing? Love is not a feeling. I know every song says it is, but it's not. A feeling comes and goes. A feeling cannot carry you through 64 years. Love is a choice. I chose Robert for 64 years. I would choose him for 64 more. And then she walks home. The young woman sat on that bench for a long time. She didn't go home and suddenly have a perfect marriage, but she went home. She looked at him differently, not as the person she expected him to be, but as the person who was there, the person who was hers, the person she could choose. And she chose him. She chooses him still.